Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and wrestling's premier photographer, Dr. Mike Leno. Mike Leno, would you like to introduce our guest for tonight?
I will. I want to say Evan is off today, but Evan Ginsberg wants to say big hi to our guest, Patrick Hernandez, longtime great referee, and he remembers when it's been about 20 plus years since I brought him to our old show, Legends. But Los Angeles wrestling history, the classic era, had great referees, as all territories have had. The best, in my opinion, being Johnny Red Shoes Dugan, who the New Japan current referee, big mark for Red Shoes. That's why he's calling himself Red Shoes. But we also had, and Johnny Dugan would go over a lot to New Japan and ref for Inoki, as did our other 60s and 70s refs in LA. Hank Matheny, Jerry Murdoch, they would work for Baba in All Japan. We also had Bobby Bockwinkel. This goes on up to Rick Knox. But my favorite referee since the classic 60s, 70s era, who I've known, I'm guessing, since about 80, maybe 98, 99, is Patrick Hernandez, one of the nicest guys in the world, and just an awesome, hardworking, athletic referee that we like seeing, and a favorite amongst all of the talent. I mean, a ton of talent. So, Patrick, I'll ask the first question, then I'll throw ping pong back and forth to Russ. Remind our audience how and where you might have started watching wrestling, how you got involved, who broke you in, all that sort of stuff, how you made the decision to be a referee, in case you might have also trained, like Prince Nana did, as a wrestler first, but he decided to manage because he loved his strength of, his mic skills, his promo skills.
First off, thank you for that intro, Mike. I mean, wow. I mean, that was great. I mean, you've always been kind, and I really appreciate those kind words. And Russell, thank you for having me. I started off. My grandfather was a big wrestling fan, and I would go visit my grandparents, and I was a little boy. He started watching Championship All-Star Wrestling on television. So I started watching it with him. I would sit down and we would watch the roller derby. And I also noticed he had wrestling magazines on his table. But, because I'm Hispanic, my grandfather had these Hispanic wrestling magazines. And some of the pictures on the covers were pretty graphic. So it kind of scared me to even flip through them. But you would have pictures of masked wrestlers with their mask cut open and blood everywhere. And pretty much I just started watching it with my grandfather. I started noticing the Wild Samoans. I had no idea who they were, and they scared me. Just their look and the way they would just dominate in the ring. And then I got familiar with Jimmy Snuka, Ray the Crippler Stevens, Freddie Blassie, Lou Albano. So that really started me in watching it and becoming a fan. It built up later with, of course, watching Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper. And I started getting familiar with the NWA and the territories. And
Now, Patrick, where did you grow up at?
In the San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
I grew up there.
Were you too young enough, though? I don't know if I asked you this 20 some odd years ago, to have seen either Tolis or Victor Rivera, the Los Angeles LaBelle promotion, or did you're talking, it sounds like maybe you started catching it with your grandfather when it was the syndicated Vince McMahon Jr. WWF show?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because I do remember on one of the public access channels, I guess at the time, I started seeing wrestling from the Olympic, little bits and pieces of it. I started getting familiar with like Victor Rivera, John Tolis, just bits and pieces. I do remember that would come on like late at night. But I have somewhat some familiarity on that. But yeah, I think it was wrestling. I just loved it, and never in my wildest dreams ever thought I'd be refereeing it. I was always a baseball guy ever since I was a little kid, going through t-ball, going through high school, going through college baseball, semi-pro, and then just out of nowhere being at the right place at the right time. Slammers started to open up when I was a kid and teenager.
I went to Slammers. I actually rented out the Slammers ring once.
Oh, okay. So then you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
I started watching the pay-per-views as a teenager, and what happened was one of my good friends who became a pro wrestler for Slammers under the name of the Samoan Kid, he found Slammers, and I didn't believe him, and he goes, you know what, next weekend I'll go take you, and we'll go check it out. And that's when we drove up there, and it was hidden. It was hidden like in an industrial area in Sun Valley, and we walked in, and that's when we met Vern Langdon for the first time. This huge, tall man, bigger than life, with this bleached blonde hair, and he's telling us, you guys want to be wrestlers? And I was too chicken. I was just happy being a fan. And my buddy decided to sign up and train, and the rest was history for him. He became a pro wrestler, and he started inviting me to their version of Gym Wars there. And that's when I met Dynamite D and Ed Ferrara and a ton of other talent. But the boys knew me, and I was always there. And being the fan, I was always in the face of the heels and cheering on the baby faces. And Danny Ramirez was the referee at the time, and what had happened was I was already going to a few shows already, and Danny, I guess something happened where he needed to quit. And my buddy Oscar, the Samoan Kid, hey Pat, how about you refereeing? And I was scared at first, and I just decided, okay, I'll give it a shot. And the guys trained me. They trained me as a wrestler, and I took some bumps. I knew how to throw punches and giving body slams and arm drags. And but I want to say I trained for like a couple of months, but I didn't know that they already had a deal in place to have wrestling shows every Thursday night at Strongbow Stadium in Bakersfield. And once I was trained, they threw me right out into the wolves. And every Thursday night, Samoan Kid would pick me up from work, and there I am. I was the only referee, and just performing in front of a crowd, and it was a scary experience for me. But the boys took care of me, and I learned a lot from them. And pretty much that's how I started. I want to say that was like maybe 95, around there.
Was that at Slammers or something different, like Ron Ramirez or Ron Rivera's thing, or are we still with Slammers and Vern Langdon? Vern Langdon, as you know, was a TV writer. I knew him very well. He wrote for whatever the outfit, Russ probably knows, that produced Rocky and Bullwinkle and Dudley.
Oh yeah, and Tennessee Tuxedo.
Ward, who had the studio.
Yes.
On Sunset Boulevard. I don't know, Patrick, you ever saw it, but I took pictures of it at the time in the 70s and 60s, and it was Rocky and Bullwinkle, and it would spin around, and it was like really catchy right at the main part of Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I also didn't know that Vern was like a huge, I guess, a makeup artist for Hollywood. I later on, I'm a big horror movie fan, and to this day, I go to conventions.
Oh, Patrick, I wish I'd known that. Next week is our horror show with Gene Basone and my friend Casey Wood. Next year, I'll put you on the list.
Patrick knows Jeannie is Hollywood, the former original Glow. She was there for all, was it 4 seasons of Glow in the 80s that I would shoot for Dave McClane.
And my good friend Casey Wood is a huge horror fan, so he was the first person I thought of to add to our list. But I'll remember you for next Halloween so that we can have you.
Let me tell Patrick this, because Russ doesn't even know this. I was at the very first I shot. There were only 3 days of it. The Not Scary Farm, which, to my mind, they're celebrating 50 years of it here. My wife and I moved back to SoCal. But I was there because I was doing some intern stuff at it was then KHJ TV Channel 9 in Los Angeles, and Larry Vincent Seymour was our horror movie host, and he did the 3 days of shows in the John Wayne Theater. That was the very first. It was pretty tame compared to, years later, the Not Scary Farms and the Universal Studios events and the Magic Mountain horror things I've been to. And he was booted off for drinking or being drunk on TV and replaced by comedian actress Cassandra Peterson, who became, of course, Elvira.
Elvira, that's right.
Pat knows that she launched right off of KHJ doing her. Yes. We were pissed at the time because we liked Larry Vincent Seymour. I have a ton of pictures of him at that.
But Patrick, tell us more about your love of horror and.
Well, it's funny how you mentioned that, because I attended last weekend. I'm a big Halloween movie fan, the 78. Wow. So I attended the 45th anniversary convention last weekend, and I got to meet John Carpenter. I also met Nick Castle, who was the original Michael Myers. But the memorabilia that I have from that movie, it's a big collection that I do carry and that I love, because that was the very first movie.
Now I wish the camera worked.
We'll get him back, because I'm going to introduce you, if you've not already been approached by the Collector's Call from MeTV. I've got some connections there, and I think that would be, fun, perhaps next year, because they might have taped everything. But the actress who was on anyway, she does it, the actress. Wait. One other thing, though. So let me just clarify. When you were roughing initially, was it for the Slammers, Vern Langdon shows, or somebody else?
It was for Slammers.
Okay.
I was there, again, every Thursday night. I want to say that ran maybe 2 years. And again, I'm young. I'm still learning. And then I noticed that different wrestlers that weren't part of Slammers started coming in, and that's when they took me under their wing. And hey, I'm going to be wrestling in San Diego. I'm going to be wrestling in Sacramento. And that opened up a lot of doors for me. And I just started traveling with a lot of these guys, and I learned a lot from them, from Gary Key to Cincinnati Red, Dynamite D, Kevin Kleinrock, all these guys. And that's when I really started to expand doing shows, and I started working with Yokozuna, and good old Rodney, God rest his soul, and I got to know him so well working for him in Sacramento and in Las Vegas that I became the official babysitter, so to speak, for his 2 kids. And but yeah, I mean, that was like the first time actually doing a show with, you're talking the Head Shrinkers, you're talking about the Honky Tonk Man, Jimmy Snuka, and I honestly felt scared and intimidated. I mean, I was in the dressing room, and all these guys are coming up to me, and these are guys I grew up watching, and it was a big step for me, but everyone took care of me, and I just started to really blow up. Once I finished wrapping up some shows with Yoko, he loved my style. He took me under his wing. Hey, I'm going to do shows in Las Vegas. I want you to work for me. And it just blew up even more. Later on, I started working with Jerry Gray for his promotion. He used to wrestle in the Florida territory. And that was something that Navajo Warrior got me jobs with him. But yeah, it just really blew up so quickly. Everything happened for me so fast, but I adjusted. And that's what a lot of the boys would tell me, man, your athleticism with the baseball and just knowing where to be, when to look, when not to look. I mean, I always hear that people would tell me, man, you make it look like a legit contest. And that's what I've always carried. You know, that's how I want the fans to see a match. I want them to believe that, hey, this is a contest. There's going to be one winner. And just hearing that just means a lot to me. It just shows that I'm doing my job. And, you know, it's been great. And then later on, I worked with the grappler, Lenny Denton. I started going.
He's been on the show. He's a friend of the show.
He's awesome. He is such a great guy. You know, he started bringing me up in Portland, and I always got thrilled when he would tell me, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go out there and cut a promo," because he was the booker, so he would always stay backstage. But then I would get a thrill when he would put that mask on and just tear the house down on the mic. I mean, it was such a thrill for me to see him go through all that. And then let alone the stories that I would hear in the dressing room from some of these guys, and, you know, that were coming in, you know, Tony Atlas and, you know, Roddy Piper would make appearances. I mean, I learned a lot, and it just took off for me so fast, so quickly. But I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. And of course, meeting Mike later on with XPW. I mean, just so much has happened, you know, for
you
me.
had a friendship with Kevin Kleinrock, who then used you for not just XPW, but I'm pretty sure you were there at Wrestling Society X. Weren't you there for those tapings?
Yes, I was. That was one of the things that Kevin Kleinrock got a hold of me. He told me about the project. He asked me, you know, is there any other referees that you think that we can bring on board? And that's when I got a hold of Danny Ramirez and Rick Knox, who's a really good friend of mine. Yeah. And, you know, the rest was history. I mean, that was a huge experience. So much fun. I wish it would have lasted longer, and, you know, unfortunately it didn't, but just the experience going through all that. I mean,
working for MTV and VH1, that were the parent company, Viacom. So in essence, you guys were all working. Wrestling Society X was an MTV project, a joint project.
Yeah, I mean, that literally was kind of the blueprint for what Lucha Underground became later on.
Yep.
You know, the whole bunker thing and just this underground type of promotion, the wildness of the crowd. I mean, it was just fun. You know, and there was a lot of talent that went on to go on with WWE that was part of Wrestling Society X. It was just a great experience. You know, again, I'm very grateful, very grateful.
Remember when Teddy Hart did some insane, it was really insane, and Jack Evans was, you know, giving him the business in the back because it was too insane, even for Teddy Hart at that Wrestling Society X. I think it was, wasn't it off? It was like really high, even higher than stuff I'd seen New Jack do. And New Jack was part of it.
Yeah, he was actually, New Jack was part of the whole pilot that we filmed. And yeah, he was a big part of it at the very beginning.
And Russ, I don't think I've ever told Russ this, but New Jack showed me how he got the effect in ECW. And I think Pat was there when he explained this to me. He put baby powder inside his breakaway guitar.
Yes.
When it hit somebody over the head, the powder would go up to the lights, and it would look like an old 60s, like the Olympic Auditorium in the 60s, with smoke going, you know, all the way up to the top lights. And so, yes, it was...
he was such an entertainer too. I mean, you know, you at least for me personally, he was such a good guy with me, a good friend. You know, when he passed, you know, of course I was devastated. It was a big loss for me because New Jack knew how to turn it on. He was an entertainer, he was an athlete, and they all are. All these guys, all the professionals, from John Tolis to Blassie to Shane Douglas to New Jack to the guys now, they're athletes. They're professionals. This is pro wrestling. And he was one of those nice guys that he would hang out here in California with me for a week. When we go out sightseeing, we go out to dinner. But New Jack was just one of a kind, and he knew how to entertain.
So I wanted to, you know, give you the classic quote from Freddie Blassie about referees, which is, he said, if you took the brains of a referee and put them in a duck, that duck would fly backwards. So
Are you sure that's not Captain Lou?
no, that one was Freddie Blassieism.
Because Captain Lou managed Blassie before Fred retired his last 2 tours.
I think this was just one he came up with on his own. But like, because actually, I've known a number of referees, including Tom Castor, who was in the same class as me when I started off at All Pro Wrestling up in Northern California, and I actually was trained to be an emergency referee for Pro Wrestling Iron, and I got to tell you, I thought it was one of the harder jobs.
Let's explain to our audience. Pro Wrestling Iron, it was Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan and Frank Murdoch, and to an extent Bison Smith's project.
Yes,
they split off. APW, and Pat doesn't know, Russ, that you were a heel manager, Buddy Satella, for both APW and Iron and other promotions.
Yes, and so for Iron, they trained me to be an emergency referee, and I just keeping track of what goes on in the ring from a manager's perspective is so much different than a referee's perspective. And well, I wanted you to maybe discuss a little bit of that, because one time I was ready to count a guy out on the mat, a guy by the name of Max Justice, who's like 6'8", and he swung his leg around, because he got kicked off, he got and his leg went and just clocked me on the side of the head full force and just knocked me like senseless. And I was, it was one of those light shows in a garage, and only the wrestlers were watching. But I was like, wow, that is you got to have your eye on the mat all the time and what's going on, or you get really pummeled.
Now, Patrick might remember him better as Mike Diamond. I don't know if he came down with either Donovan or Mike Modest to, I can't remember now, XPW, if he was used like once. The way Joe Applebaumer, as you'll remember, he was one of our APW guys, because I was,
Pogo.
Yeah,
Clown. Pogo the Clown.
Yes, exactly.
Great John Wayne Gacy shtick.
I know, a little weird. But anyway, so you want to expound on how you keep your eye on the ring and how important it is to be focused on what goes on.
It's so funny because I'm familiar with a lot of those guys that you mentioned, from Max Justice to a lot of those guys from APW that later on did get their feet wet with XPW. But yeah, like what you're saying, Russell, you have to position yourself. And that's one of the things that I'm always constantly thinking, where I try to position myself in regards to and how the match is. I try to feel out the match where I can pretty much tell what's going to happen before it happens. Their style, where I'm always constantly, okay, this is going to be a situation where there's going to be a pin attempt. So I always try to position myself where I'm counting the shoulders and not other parts of their body, because again, you want to make it look real. But I've had situations where I've gotten hit from a kick out, a body part hits me, and that tells me, okay, I wasn't positioned right. But there's a lot that goes behind it. If it's not just the pin attempts and counting to 3, it's you need to get that feel for those guys, where if they're hurt, try to communicate. That's one, unfortunately, it's happened before. I did a show a long time ago for the NWA in Las Vegas, and I did a tag match, and there was this high spot that took place outside, and I noticed that one of the guys landed on the back of his head. And I quickly left the ring, went outside, checked on him. I was holding his hands, and I'm telling him, look, if you're okay, squeeze my hand. But then I started noticing blood from the back of his head. So right off the bat, I knew what to do. I started talking to the other guys in the ring, outside the ring, and right away, the big X symbol coming from my arms. And, I could see the paramedics rushing out to ringside. There's just a lot. There's a lot that goes on besides counting the three. I'm always a motivator, like a cheerleader in the ring. You know, if they're losing the crowd, I'm going to tell them, hey, you know, we need to do something else. You know, it's too quiet in here. The crowd's quiet. You know, the whole communication to me is huge. It's part of the magic of what pro wrestling is, and keeping the time, making sure that we're not going over. So there's a lot, and it's funny because, what was it last year? You know, because I'm doing XPW again. You know, XPW is running shows, and that was one of the things that we sat with Rob Black. You know, Rob Black was kind of, you know, all you guys do is just count to three. No, there's more to it. So he was just amazed, and just he couldn't believe of all the information I was giving to him. So we had to smart him up a bit, and he now has this new respect when it comes to a pro wrestling referee. You know,
Well,
there's a lot that goes behind it.
Yeah, and you know, the lexicon in the world of wrestling, obviously wrestlers hate referees, but in real life, the referees that I've known usually have the best relationships in the locker room with everybody. They seem to never well, one thing is that they never have an ego.
They link everybody together. They're the communicators that are communicating between the two guys, and often Rob Black didn't have, you know, because I think Pat was senior referee for XPW. He didn't have an earpiece on him to communicate, or was not aware of that, you know, like major promotions. You see that in AEW where Rick Knox is.
But refs are never involved in politics in the locker room. They're always the guys that like get along with everybody, and so there's never any sense of partiality or siding with someone over another. Just the
communicators between the promoter to the boys.
And it's just they tend to have nice personalities. You know, they're not, you know, on the extreme edge one way or the other. I guess that would make them more ring talent than referees. So is there ever a situation where you felt like you had to like side with one wrestler over another, and then how did you deal with that because of the fact that you wanted to remain neutral mostly with everybody in the locker room?
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. I mean, again, we're all professionals. We're all professionals here, and I did a match long time ago for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, PWG, and it was Kevin Steen versus Pac. And I got so intrigued, and I got so excited. You know, again, you're still a fan. Let's face it, we're all fans still in our hearts. We're still fans. But, you know, I was in the middle of this match, and the way that they worked together telling the story, where I can hear the reaction of the crowd, where I can see how Kevin Steen using every little dirty trick in the book to make it difficult for Pac. And, you know, I'm kind of like, oh man, you know, I became that little fan where, man, Pac, you know, let's speed it up a bit, and, you know, start retaliating. And here comes the big finish. Pac does like a 450 off the top rope on Kevin Steen. And here's a rarity. I count 1, 2, and Kevin Steen tells me, Pat, I'm kicking out. And he did it. He kicked out, and the crowd was so hot that Kevin Steen told Pac, you know what? Hit me again. Go up to the top. Hit it again. And he did it. And this time I knew pretty much because of the crowd reaction, this was it. We're closing it right here. And that's when I started counting the full 3 count. But situations like that, yeah, I mean, you know, you get the little fan in you, and, you know, and that's one of those. That's one of those situations with that match. Definitely.
Wow.
It happens.
Let me ask very quickly, Patrick, I know we're going to let you plug everything, your social media, upcoming dates and stuff. But on the XPW Dark Side episode, I had referred a number of guys. I'm sure Kevin Kleinrock also referred you, although I'm just doing this from memory, didn't appear in it. But, you know, folks like our Jessica Darlin and Messiah were on, you know, talking heads on that Dark Side. I forget, did you not want, a lot of guys didn't want to participate in it for obvious reasons, a lot of us have a soft place in our hearts for Rob Black, who's a total character. And I always got along, great with all of them. And a lot of those folks, you would see all of our friends anytime I would come down, but you were living here when I was still up north. Did you choose not to participate, or were you just not contacted for that dark side?
Honestly, Mike, I was never contacted.
Well,
I mean, I've seen the program, and I mean, like you said earlier, you know Rob Black, and for me personally, I've never had any beef with Rob Black, and he's been very open and with me, and that's a funny thing. We're all, Rob Black's an actor, and until you really need, sit down and really get to know him, then he invites you in his inner circle, and it's a different Rob Black, especially now that XPW is running out here again. He's totally different in a way, because now he's a family man. He lives in New York, and the times that we get together out here for the shows, he's talking about his family, and he's focused on the show and the lineup, and conducting business. But it's a different Rob Black. You have to get to know him in order to, pass judgment or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, I've never had any problems with him. He's always taken care of me, and he's always respected my decisions and my opinions. And yeah, I mean, and that's why I continue to work for him. So,
Patrick, can you tell me what you feel was your favorite match to referee?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I want to say, okay, XPW, LA Sports Arena, when Shane Douglas versus Chris Candido for the XPW title, and this is when Sabu came in as the big surprise. Sabu showed up, and all hell broke loose. But again, it was just the historic venue for me, the Los Angeles Sports Arena. I mean, I went there to go see my very first WWF show. And I remember I saw Jesse Hernandez, who I love. He's a good friend of mine. And I saw Jesse Hernandez referee a lot of these house shows.
But no relation.
Or
the other referee, SoCal referee Juan Hernandez, who passed away recently. So Jesse wasn't related to him, to my knowledge. Neither were you. But Jesse did a real nice write-up on him. They were very close.
Yeah, Jesse's awesome. He's a legend. All these guys are legends, and I grew up watching them at the house shows for the WWF. But again, it was the venue. When we started doing shows at the LA Sports Arena, I got there early to help set up with the ring crew, and once everything was set up, I just stood there in the middle of the ring, and I was like, wow, you know what? This is a historic venue. And the WrestleManias, and then later on doing shows at the Olympic. That was another one that I really was dear to my heart, because again, the history, the Guerreros and Piper and Blassie and Tolis, and you could go on and on, Andre the Giant, and it's just so historic. And being part of it, being in the ring, in the squared circle, in a major historic venue, it means the world to me, and I just cherish those. And I just been lucky. I've been very lucky, very fortunate.
That's great. But we're going to have to let him go. Both he and I have to leave. But Pat, let me let you plug anything and everything, whether it's your social media, charities, upcoming dates, anything you'd like to plug. The time is yours.
So right now, getting ready for XPW on the 29th of October. XPW is going to be doing a show at the Airtel. It's their Halloween show. So that's going to be pretty big. I'll be there.
What city is that? What city is that in?
That's in Van Nuys, the Airtel Hotel in Van Nuys, at the Van Nuys Airport. So that's going to be on the 29th. It's the big Halloween in Hell 4, I believe it is, for XPW. So I'll be there. if you're going to come out, come out, say hi, support the promotion. Always, wherever you're going to be, when it comes to the indie circuit, always go out there and support. But yeah, that's going to be the latest. That's going to be the latest right now. It's going to be the 29th.
And how could our fans get in touch with you if they want to get a hold of you through social media?
Well, right now, honestly, I'm starting to create a fan page because I've been getting a lot of requests, and so I'm working on that right now. But as soon as I have it completed, I'm definitely going to let you guys know, and then we'll go from there.
Love to have you on the show. And while we have another couple minutes here, I just want to close out the show by giving a shout out to the memory of Russ Francis, the tight end for the 49ers, who died tragically in a plane crash and was in the WrestleMania 2 Battle Royale. A lot of people don't know.
Oh, that's right.
Well, he wrestled for his father in Hawaii. His two other brothers wrestled, but they didn't last as long. But Russ wrestled for his dad, the famous and best Hawaiian promoter, and Ed Francis, who was paired with Lord Blears. And he did a lot of AWA work. And then I emailed, I think, both of you, or at least Russ, that at the 2015 WrestleMania, it was about 2 days before the WrestleMania and the Hall of Fame there at the Shark Tank, and then the WrestleMania was at Levi Outdoor Stadium. But I sat front row for the press conference with Russ, and he had been hired by Vince Jr. to be like the local Northern California, for just a couple of months, PR liaison to WWF. And he'd report back and fly back and forth to Stanford. But terrific guy. Russ and I know what an incredible icon for the 49ers.
49ers. I don't know. You're San Fernando Valley, so you're probably a Rams fan. I don't know where.
Unfortunately, I'm a Las Vegas Raider fan.
Raider fan.
I started watching them in the 80s, early 80s, like in 1980, 81, and the rest is history.
Javier Ost, who was a journalist, is also a big fan of the show. He'll commiserate with you. But anyway, it is really great to have you on the show. Sorry it's such a short time slot for you, but I know you're busy on a Sunday afternoon like all of us are, and I'm going to get ready for the 49er game. So really appreciate having you on. We definitely want to have you on next year for our Halloween thing, because I can tell you all about Ray Harryhausen and Mark Satrakian, but that's for
let me throw out some dedications. I want to say high praise and send all kind of love and prayers to the late great Dick Butkus, NFL legend, and a guy that Patrick Hernandez, referee extraordinaire, a close friend of ours, even closer to Pat, was Dynamite D, and Cincinnati Red, who I just thought the world of. Drove to a lot of shows with him. He would take me even to shows he wasn't on. And there was another brother there, Dynamite D, who was just absolutely incredible. So many roles he fulfilled. He did like everything. Such a creative genius, and I'm sure Pat would agree.
Absolutely. He wrestled Terry Funk a few times and had some great matches with him. I mean, you're talking history. It's Dynamite D, Cincinnati Red, taken away from us far too soon. I miss them. I learned a lot from them. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those two guys, honestly. But yeah, you're right, Mike. Great guys. Great guys.
Hey, the next time I talk to Rick Knox, I'll say, well, let's get Patrick in AEW.
We'll get your camera working. We'll make sure you get your camera working so you can show us all your Friday the 13th stuff.
Halloween.
Forum, Patrick, for AEW. That's in November, mid-November, the 15th or 18th.
What was that, Mike? I'm sorry.
We got to get you reffing on that AEW pay-per-view at the Forum.
Hey, you know what? Never say never. That's what Terry Funk told me, and he was such a class act too. I learned a lot from Terry. God bless him and his family. He's gone now, but Terry would always tell me, never say never, Pat. Never say never. You never know. That's wrestling.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll see everyone next week. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Combate Kurosai.